IVM.
IVM Likes is an IVM production, and if you enjoy the show, check out our brand new show, The Vishal Gondal Show. Every fortnight, Vishal has in-depth conversations with super achievers from various fields like Ronnie Screwvala, Amidst and others. You do not want to miss this.
Hello and welcome to another episode of IVM Likes. This is Abbas here. It's been a while since I was on the show, so it's good to be back. With me in the studio, I have Alika Gupta.
Hi.
And Navin Narona.
Yup.
And we are back with a bag full of recommendations again. And we're going to have a conversation about werewolves in the second half.
Oh.
So, exactly. I hope
this is in honor of the supermoon, right?
Yes.
It is, yes.
Tell us what supermoon is, Alika.
Oh man. Okay, so as far as I figured out, it's like a pretty rare thing. There are three things happening. There's a supermoon, which is like, it's about 14% brighter than normal. And then it's a blue moon also, which means it's the second full moon in the month. And it's a red moon, which actually means the moon is red during the lunar eclipse.
It's like a party month for werewolves.
Nice.
Then.
Yeah.
Nice. So we're going to have that conversation in the second half. But of course, right now, we're going to kick things off with some recommendations. We have Alika recommending a comic book, Navin recommending a movie, and I'll be recommending a YouTube video. So let's start with who wants to go first?
Because she has a short note written, Alika.
Yes, Alika. Grace us with your recommendation.
Thanks for
Homework game is on point.
putting me on the spot while I
You
get
had like
my...
a week to prepare for this.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was like just 2 hours before when I got to know. Okay, but I'm going to be recommending a comic book. It's a comic called Head Lopper, which is literally the lopping of heads. It started off as a self-published comic, and now it's currently being published by Image Comics. You may know Image Comics as the people who publish things like Saga, Wicked and the Divine, Rat Queens, Paper Girls. I should actually recommend all of them.
Dead.
The Walking
You
Dead.
That's
missed
boring.
like the biggest
No,
one.
that's literally the most
That
boring
was the
one.
money-making thing for them.
Yeah, probably the money making, but literally the most boring one. I should recommend all the ones which I just named individually because they're amazing.
You just did.
No, but I have to tell you about them, which I'm not doing right now.
That'll be like an entire whole spin-off episode for this.
Yeah, okay, but Headlopper is a comic which has been created, written and drawn by a guy called Andrew McLean and colored by a guy called Mike Spicer. At least the first 4 issues, which is the first volume, came out in 2015, and you can get the first 4 issues in trade backs, and the second should be available in March 2018. It's a very simple fantasy comic, kind of very Conan the Barbarian sorts.
Oh, nice.
It's just this guy who's like this big beefy Viking barbarian guy with a big ass sword called Norgal. Not the sword. The sword is not called anything. The guy is called Norgal.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, and like all the people in the fantasy land call him Headlopper because that's what he's famous for. He goes around and he kills monsters for money.
He gives good headlopper.
Yeah. Oh God.
Now Navin's ruined it for you now.
No, but the comic is too good to be ruined. So
Oh.
And he travels around with a talking witch head called Agatha.
So he's killing monsters for money. Who's paying him?
Yeah, the people who the monsters are
okay.
terrorizing, the villages and the towns.
All right.
So the thing is this, it's a very simple, very straightforward fantasy thing. It's not like reinventing the wheel. It's
So
not
beefy demon killer for hire.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's not like, it's not breaking any tropes or anything. It's super simple, super straightforward, but it's like really fun to read. It's just like great, it's kind of like a hardcore metal version of Adventure Time.
Oh,
Almost.
nice. So does he kill one monster each issue, or does he have like a long?
There's like an arc.
Okay.
So there's like a whole bad guy, and he has to go and find out who it is and things like that. So, but he does chop off a lot of heads. I think in the 4 issues I read the first volume, he chops off about like 10 heads. It's pretty cool.
That's
a good
more
number.
than 2 heads per issue.
Yeah.
So that gives you a right to call yourself headlopper.
Yeah, it's a very classic pulp sort of thing. And the best part about this, because for me, since I am the graphic designer and artist, is the art style. If you have seen Mike Mignola's Hellboy, the art style is very similar to that. It's
nice.
super clean lines, super bold colors, really dark shadows. So it gives the Fantasyland a really, eerie, kind of bold, popping look. It's amazing. So that's like the best part of the whole comic. Just seeing the super clean lines, and all the fight sequences are dynamic, but they're also kind of tense, and the character designs are out of this world. Definitely you should check it out if you like any sort of comics which have that sort of, simple lines, dark shadow, Mike Mignola sort of design. And you can get it on Comixology. And while I'm at this comics thing, let me plug Comixology. It's a really great website. Hey guys, if you're in India like me, and you don't find half the comics you want to read like me, I suggest getting Comixology, the app, or go to the website and get yourself an account there. You can find all the comics in a digital format. There are quite a few free comics. If you get an unlimited account, you can get even more free comics. And they have a really nice way to read them. They have this thing called guided view. So, like, if you click on a comic book page, it'll take you panel by panel as your eye is supposed to move through that.
Oh, nice.
It's really cool. It's super convenient to read, and at least you get to read all the comics, which you don't find in bookstores here.
It's a great
Actually, playing off of that, there's this podcast called the Nerdist Writers panel on which they had Kelly Sue DeConnick, who's also a comic book writer, and she actually mentions how that format has changed the way they make layouts of pages, because usually the big reveals used to come when you turn the page.
Right.
Now it happens when you swipe the panel. So how that is changed. The only thing I don't like about Comixology is, unlike Amazon or Netflix, they haven't brought the prices down for an Indian market. So if a comic costs $3 in America, it'll cost you the Indian rupee version of $3 rather than. So yeah, if they get that fixed, I'll be very happy to.
That is true, but on the other hand, they have sales going on every day. So it's like a lot of good sales, like 70% off on something or the other, based on whatever the theme of the month is. So if you can just kind of figure out when the sale is going on,
freaking Amazon taking over everything.
Yep.
That's what it's coming to.
So that was Alika's recommendation, Head Lopper by what's the artist? Andrew McLean. And we're going to move on to Naveen, who has...
Just for the record, the Black Panther's out in some parts of the world, and I'm already like super excited. I don't know, just wanted to...
The movie's out?
As in, like, the premiere's out.
Critic screenings have happened.
Yeah. And I just like open Comixology and Black Panther, the new issue is there.
Nice.
So yeah, cool.
Alright, so
let's check it out before the release.
Speaking of movies, there's a segue there.
Beautiful segue, yeah.
We have a movie recommendation by Naveen. So
okay, so I'm recommending a movie called Hurricane Bianca. It's a 2016 movie. It's a comedy film, and this again like shoots off from my last week's obsession for RuPaul's Drag Race. So if you are listening for the first time, go back and then like understand the obsession. Why is this happening? I'm on the 9th season now, which is like 2 seasons shy of finishing everything that's ever been filmed on that set.
Impressive.
And I was telling Alika this morning how I actually consume said episodes, and she's impressed. For the first time, she actually raised a brow at me with a look of admiration.
So how do you consume?
I thought it was insanity.
That's not important right now. Okay. The point being that from a lot of these episodes, you kind of like have favorite characters. And season 6, if you want to watch RuPaul's Drag Race and really understand what the show is all about, just watch season 6, because it has some of the finest drag performers and the sassiest queens, the best fights, and like everything you want in a reality show, it's all there. So one of my favorite, the one who actually won that season was called Bianca Del Rio. She's an older drag performer from New York who's an insult comic.
Okay.
And she's just like the snappiest, brashiest comic, and that she doesn't drag, okay? So like she's got no holds barred kind of attitude. And in the show again, like that shows. At the same time, she's a very nice and sweet person also. So if somebody's like, one of the people on the show comes out to her and says that, like I'm dealing with HIV. So at that point, instead of being snappy about it, she was like, if you want something, if you want help, then call an old bitch like me. Like, she would say that in the weirdest way, but she still is a nice person. So what they did in this movie is try to capture that very essence, and a lot of it is based on Bianca's true life. Her real name is Roy Haylock, and in this movie, he plays Richard Martinez, a professor of science who wants to help kids understand science nicely. She's a very... kind of like, because she's a drag performer, she's also very exuberant in a way. But she ends up landing a job in a bump town in Texas, to put it nicely. and they don't want you to be gay, right? So like they dig up his profile, where he has like a profile on a gay website, and they out him, and then they throw him out of the school. So now he meets a former drag queen, now a transgender person, who takes him to a nightclub where there's drag performers, and this guy gets drunk and dresses up in drag and wakes up next morning and decides, why don't I go to work in drag? And they'll never find out. So she gets herself reappointed as a science teacher as Bianca Del Rio, and as the drag performer, and then like whoever did anything wrong with her in the first half, she's dishing them some fish in the second half. so yeah.
So it's a revenge comedy.
Yeah, it's a revenge comedy. And like
Amazing.
there are these very nasty kids in the class. Like, you know, very Mrs. Doubtfire meets I don't know,
Dead
like
Poet
Dead Poet
Society.
Society. Sort of, yeah. So it's a fun romper, and like I would obviously recommend checking out Bianca's work before you watch the movie, because you understand why she's so glorified in the drag scene. Like, you know, I understand the obsession. I really breathe what she says, you know, because that's how you have to be in life. You have to be like, you serve the tea, which is the truth. And so they say no tea, no shade. So if you're not saying the truth, you can't be throwing shade.
I see.
That's how it works. So yeah, so Hurricane Bianca, check it out.
Nice. When did the movie come out? 2016.
2016, yeah.
Oh, fairly new.
I like that saying. No tea, no shade.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's good. I'm going to use that sometime for you.
Thanks, man.
And to round off the recommendations, I am going to recommend a YouTube video. So The Hollywood Reporter does these roundtables with actors, directors, and comedians. So I'm recommending the 2018 Directors Roundtable, which is hosted by Stephen Galloway, who's the editor for Hollywood Reporter. The directors featured on that are Guillermo del Toro, Angelina Jolie, Patty Jenkins, Denis Villeneuve, Joe Wright, who directed The Darkest Hour, and Greta Gerwig, who did Lady Bird. So it's a really cool bunch of people together. What is great about the roundtable is that you have someone like Guillermo del Toro and Joe Wright, who are more of introvert kind of directors, and then you have Angelina Jolie and Greta Gerwig, who have also been actors. So it's a really good back and forth.
Is Jordan Peele also on this?
Jordan Peele is on the comedian roundtable, I think.
That's weird, because he's nominated for Best Director.
He is. So there are two directors roundtable. He might be on the second one for directing
Okay.
Get Out, but I've only seen this one. It's a pretty interesting roundtable. Guillermo del Toro shares some really cool anecdotes of shooting.
I love him so much, dude. He's,
I
Wait,
love
I
him.
think I saw this.
So they've released some clippings of it as well. Maybe you've
I
seen
saw-
one of those.
Yeah, I might have seen
Yeah,
that.
so he talks about the troubles he had to face while shooting Shape of Water. And one thing I liked is he said, Guillermo del Toro, that up till now he has made films which are basically what his adolescent fantasies were, robots, monsters, and all. For the first time he wanted to make an quote-unquote adult film, as in with about human emotions, but also featuring fantasy elements
Yeah.
and
you
monsters.
gotta have monsters. Every movie
Yeah.
of his has monsters.
Yeah.
Hey, look, man, the monsters are cool.
And that's what he said at Golden Globes, not that monsters saved me.
Yeah,
And I was like,
exactly.
I kind of teared up when he said that, because it's so amazing to have, like, you know, somebody who's kind of a bastion of that art form.
Right.
Monster films were like a major thing in Japan, and he's the only one in a way keeping that tradition
Alive in Hollywood.
very
Yeah. And Patty Jenkins talks about shooting Wonder Woman. Patty Jenkins had only shot indie films
Correct,
so
yeah.
far, but for the first time she was shooting such a big budget film. And whenever Angelina Jolie speaks, you get a different perspective, because like I said, she's been an actress, so she has a different viewpoint from the other people, and she owns up to it. So it's about an hour long. Really fun just to know about cinema, just to know about how films are shot and how each director approached their subjects differently. Another interesting thing was Denis Villeneuve talks about shooting Blade Runner 2049, and he says that he knew if this movie doesn't do well or bombs, this might be my last movie in Hollywood, because everybody will be like, you ruined Blade Runner.
But thankfully, no.
But it was so good. And then
But still, financially, did it like
it
recuperate
didn't do
enough?
that well, but I can see it becoming a cult hit like the original one.
Yeah, because again, IMDb is all lit with, like, you know, like there's either 1-star reviews or 10-star reviews. There's like a very
Yeah.
No in between.
there's in between as well, but extremity is very obvious in the way people are talking about this movie, because it's clearly it's a
Because it hits
experience to-
nostalgia,
Yeah.
right?
No, nostalgia
but
is very
it's-
rare in the movie.
Yeah.
I feel what he's doing is, like, you know, getting inspired by the original, but doing
I see.
something
Expanding that so much more.
Yeah, and like, you know, wider screens, and like just like the atmosphere is all messed up. And what they do with Mr. Robot, I see him employing some very similar styles
Okay.
over here, like, you know, cornering the artist or the character in frame to show how lonely or disparate their life is.
Nice.
So all of that kind of work. So I like that for that movie, because it's one of those movies, like, I watch everything new on my laptop. For the first time, I hooked up my computer to my laptop, and like I watched the whole thing on a bigger screen,
Nice.
just to take in
yeah,
that
it
experience.
deserves that experience.
Yeah.
So Joe
Because
Wright.
that's what I'm saying, right? In India, it came to Bombay for 2 weeks, and in 2 weeks it was gone, because
Yeah.
some other
Yeah.
Diwali bullshit movie came out, and then, you know, couldn't watch it.
Yeah, this is the bane of watching any Hollywood movie in India. If you do not go in the first week, your chance of seeing it
That's
is
true.
low.
Yeah.
which sucks.
So,
Because
yeah,
I
so
usually
Joe-
am not aware of what releases when.
Joe right at that point brings up that he directed this Peter Pan movie starring Hugh Jackman, which bombed really
Rooney Mara
badly.
one,
Yeah.
no? Yeah.
Exactly. So they have a little conversation about failing on a really big scale. So it's a really good conversation. Have a look at it. It's the Directors Roundtable on the Hollywood Reporter YouTube channel. So those are our recommendations. We started with Alika, who recommended,
Headlopper by Andrew McLean.
and Navin recommended,
The movie Hurricane Bianca.
and I recommended the Directors Roundtable by the Hollywood Reporter. So we'll take a little break at this point, and we'll come back and we will howl in our loudest voices to talk about.
Let's not. This sounds weird.
That was Naveen huffing into the mic. Nothing
Hungry.
else. We're going to talk about werewolves on the other side of this break.
Give me a virgin's blood.
Hi, I'm Amit Verma, the host of the weekly podcast The Seen and the Unseen. In my show, I examine the seen effects and the unintended consequences of public policy and private action. I show how policies meant to help the poor often end up hurting the poor. I've done episodes so far on demonetization, GST, surgical strikes, immigration and MRP. And I will continue my forensic assault on the truth in the weeks to come.
Catch the show every Monday on the IVM podcast app or any other podcasting app that you prefer. Or visit seenunseen.in for all the latest updates. And we're back. In the second half, we're going to talk about werewolves because it's the month of the super moon / blue moon / red moon. So let's talk about werewolves, guys. Where do you stand on them?
It's like even the moon wants America to be rolling all over us.
Oh, blue and red. That's
Yeah.
why. Oh, nice.
Oh.
Which is ironic because werewolves aren't really an American creation. They come from lore from other European countries.
Yeah, as far as I know, they come from, a lot of Germanic traditions.
I see.
And I know, like, Virgil, the Roman writer, used to write about, like, men turning into wolves and things.
And that the vampire lore and the werewolf lore rose around same time. Wasn't
Yeah,
it?
roughly the same time. As far as I can tell, it kind of happened because of the whole witch hunt things. So people wanted a reason to persecute certain other people, so they made up shit about
So
them.
what was your first exposure to werewolves? Or
So
when
they didn't
you
like
first
hairy
started?
people in the stats. They're like,
Yeah.
these guys are wolfy.
So there's an
Let's knock
actual
them.
condition called, like, I guess it's called lycanthropy, but where you get, like, excessive body
It
hair
is
or
lycanthropy.
something.
It's a lyric in She Wolf, which is Shakira's song.
Ooh, okay.
Oh God.
There's a she wolf in your closet. Open up and let her free. Oh, that's how it goes.
This is going to be the most serious discussion of werewolves.
But I'll
ever.
tell you my first exposure to a werewolf.
Interaction and
wasn't-
exposure to a
It wasn't
werewolf.
even a werewolf. Okay, do you two, I don't know about you, Alika, but I think do you remember this Rahul Roy film called Junoon?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I remember
in which
it.
he becomes a tiger.
yeah.
But the concept is the same on the night. Do you remember it, Alika? Have you seen it?
She has no idea.
I've seen maybe like
Dude.
10 Hindi movies.
Okay, that should have been one
Do
of
you
them.
even know
But
who Rahul Roy is?
No.
he's
I have
also an
no idea.
ex-Big Boss winner. Shame on
What
you.
is the big boss?
Wow, okay. Mic
Definitely
drop.
not a small boss.
So
It's Big
Rahul,
Brother in India.
yeah.
Oh.
Anyway,
Oh my God.
coming back to Junoon, so Rahul Roy on a full moon night used to turn into a tiger, if I
Wait,
remember
I wonder
correctly.
if see, Big Boss posters are everywhere in the city. Like they are big trailers carrying these massive posters with Salman Khan's face on it. How do you not even look outside the window when you're traveling? Like, do you not?
I don't need to
It's
look
behind
at
rickshaws. There's stickers behind rickshaws. Big Boss is like the most.
And it's like in its 10th season. It's been on air for 10 years.
Yeah,
Okay. So,
man. Oh, sorry, you were saying.
Junoon was a film where Rahul Roy turned into a tiger. That was my first
Yeah,
exposure
but
to
the turning
this.
part of it was like very copied from an American werewolf
Yeah,
in
of
Paris.
course,
Like, you know, the
yeah.
transformation scene, the slow-mo shots of his hand nails coming out.
Yeah.
So I was assuming that he would look like a werewolf, but he ended up looking like a tiger in the end of it.
so
it's
you
like,
had assumptions about this, which means you knew what a werewolf was before that.
no, I just like assumed, okay, so my first exposure to something like, you know, before I even saw that Junoon movie, I remember watching this movie called Jani Dushman, the first one, not the new one. Okay, and it's equally camp because it's a 1979 movie, but like a star-studded cast with like, we have Sunil Dutt, Sanjeev Kumar, Jitendra, Shatrughan Sinha, Vinod Mehra, Rekha,
It's like
Neetu
a
Singh,
list of A-listers.
Amrish Puri, yeah, Raza Murad, all these big people, and they all are on the hunt for like this one guy who turns into a wolfish character. So I was expecting that when I was watching Junoon
Okay.
as well. But then first proper understanding of that came when I watched Van Helsing.
Oh yeah, that was a really
The Hugh
good
Jackman man.
Yeah, yeah.
Listen,
Yeah.
it may have been a crap movie, but it was amazing.
It's not.
when
I think
saw
for
it.
its time, the special effects were very good.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Especially the end scene.
I was banned from seeing it because my parents thought it was like too gory. I
Yeah.
still saw it like at
where
12
the heroine's brother has been bitten by the werewolves, right?
As far as I know, like there were these two. It's been a long time.
So I
but
remember
know.
clearly there's one Count Dracula with 3 wives.
Yes.
Was haunting a village.
There's a Dracula in the movie also.
There's a
Okay.
Frankenstein in the movie also.
There's a Frankenstein in the
Okay,
movie
need to see
also.
this.
It's a very long-winded plot,
Yeah.
but they've squeezed in all the main
Gothic
monsters.
horror
Yeah.
okay.
monsters.
So the Dracula is haunting the town, and his 3 wives go out like fishing for people. Like,
Yeah.
And Van Helsing is called on to
Hunt them.
Exterminate.
Yeah. So he kills one of them, and then they go and try to spawn more kids.
Yeah.
So basically, these 3 wives are helping him have more vampire babies.
Yeah.
At the same time,
But they're all dead, and then
Yeah.
they need like the blood of this one person to activate. them.
Yeah, who's a Frankenstein.
I
monster.
think so, yeah.
So they basically need him as a sacrifice.
Yeah.
At the same time, he falls in love with a girl, and her brother's a werewolf.
Yeah.
And
This doesn't sound
Yeah.
like we're pitching the movie well.
no, so
No, but
but,
I'm intrigued.
but in the end, okay, so what happens in the end is like Hugh Jackman gets bitten
By the werewolf, and he turns
Okay.
into a really cool jacked
Yeah,
werewolf.
yeah, he's like a werewolf, like Wolverine werewolf.
Yeah.
And he fights the monster, Dracula monster like that. And Dracula's monster becomes like a massive bat at the end.
Yeah.
So the fight is like really, action packed.
Wolf versus bat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
full on like badassery.
It was
For its
really
time, the
great.
effects were pretty good, I
Yeah.
would say.
I was young when I watched it. I was blown away.
Yeah,
I said,
yeah.
this is the coolest shit I've seen.
Yeah, and then we watched Harry Potter. I think that's
Yeah.
where we all had the first understanding of even what werewolf is.
Yeah.
Before that, I remember reading a Goosebumps
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
storybook
I read
about werewolves.
so many Goosebumps and R.L. Stein Fear Street, which all dealt with werewolves. Like
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
probably my first werewolf thing besides like actual mythology books. So he had his Goosebumps series, right? That was like
correct.
the for kids campy stuff, and then he had this series called Fear Street,
Yeah.
which is just for slightly older than
Older stuff,
absolute kids, like kind of a young teens sorts. So I mean, there'd be like weird romance things in it, but there were like werewolves and vampires. It was weird, but it was great because there were werewolves.
But I was massively disappointed with the Prisoner of Azkaban movie werewolf because they made
Yeah, it
him
looks so thin.
yeah and bald and he had really small hands.
But I think that is more like a representation of how like flaily Lupin is.
Yeah.
Like look at Fenrir Greyback,
Yeah.
who's like a much macho version of a
That is
werewolf.
true.
I think Remus Lupin, the way he's portrayed in the movie is because of the reason that his werewolf version is also like a very thin version.
Yeah, he looks really starved. I felt kind of bad for
Yeah,
him.
that's what they want, for you to feel bad for him.
For us to feel bad for that monster that's going to kill everyone.
And in the Twilight movies, what's that guy's name? Taylor Lautner. He was the werewolf, right?
He's the actor.
I feel like
he was the
Jacob is the character, and I actually I like the Twilight movies for that very reason, because the transformation scenes for those guys from human to wolf would be so cool.
Yeah.
Like he would jump like with his
Yeah,
chuds
yeah.
and then become like a big like a big wolf, and then protect the girls and everything. And yeah, so in terms of animation, Twilight got the wolf look right.
Okay.
They're not particularly
but
werewolves.
they look like wolves. They just look like big wolves.
Yeah.
So how
they
is
are.
a werewolf supposed to look ideally?
Is
it a wolf?
Because it's not real, as far as I know. If they're real, please correct me.
As in, is it supposed to be a wolf on 2
like
legs?
Sanjeev Kumar?
Also, Seth Green played a werewolf in Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But that was a very tame version.
Very tame version.
Yeah.
He was in it for like 5 or 6 episodes, but he had a little arc, and then they made a spin-off comic out of it. So is Wolverine based like is he supposed? He's not supposed to be a
No,
werewolf,
it's
right?
based on the creature Wolverine.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Acha.
He does kind of look like a werewolf.
Yeah. I mean, like with the side.
With the,
locks and
the whole
everything.
hairy and bub, whatever. Yeah. So but like the X-Men have a werewolf, like a proper werewolf, a Wolf's Bane. If you remember the character of Wolf's Bane, she's like a proper werewolf, except that it's a mutant power, not a condition inflicted by a bite.
So does she change into a wolf?
Yeah, she can change into like full wolf, or she can be like half wolf, half person.
And she hasn't been portrayed in the movies yet?
No, not in any of the X-Men movies. But she was there in the X-Men Evolution cartoon.
I see.
If anyone watched that, it was great, okay? I don't care if people diss me about it. It was a great cartoon.
That was a great cartoon. Do either of you watch The Vampire Diaries? Because I think there are a few werewolves in that as well.
I don't.
Do you, Alika?
No, sorry.
That whole young adult True Blood Vampire Diaries.
True
not my
Blood
genre.
True Blood was vampires only.
I feel like wherever you
True
have
Blood was.
vampires, a
It's
werewolf
blurring the
will
title.
show up
Yeah.
sooner or later.
What is this vampire versus werewolf thing? Even in Underworld, wasn't that the whole plot of Underworld? You had vampires on one side and werewolves on the other
That's
side.
the whole thing with them.
Who were the Lycans? I think the Lycans were supposed to be
Yeah, the Lycans are werewolves.
werewolves,
Yeah.
right?
That's the word for wolf.
So
Lycan.
who would you choose if you were to pick vampires or werewolves?
See, now I need a list of pros and cons from either
Oh.
side.
Like off the top of your head.
Yeah, like
3
so-
pros and 3 cons
Oh,
of
God.
werewolves.
So-
Okay, one con is they'll gotta be smelly because they're so hairy.
But they're not hairy all the time.
No.
No, okay, so werewolf. Pro, you get to be a wolf. That's pretty badass. Pro, you don't have to be a wolf all the time. And okay, I can't think of another pro right now.
You don't die because of garlic or crosses.
That is true. You don't die because of
Ooh.
garlic or crosses. Con, you die because of silver.
Yeah. Con, you'll kill your
Yeah.
own family and,
Con,
eat,
yeah.
and eat all of them.
Yeah, you do kill your family. Or, I mean, basically
And then
you...
shit them in human form.
That's gross. Yeah, but the con is that you are not in control of your actions, apparently. And con, you have to keep buying new clothes because you keep shredding them every time you transform.
Yeah, that's actually one thing. Vampires get to dress sexily as opposed to werewolves who are in the nude.
Yeah, they can have long
the
hair.
werewolves are like the monster hobos.
Yeah.
And
That's
vampires are like the goth fashionistas.
Yeah, the high class people
Yeah.
who have multiple wives and like can drink your blood if they want to.
Yeah, but then they are like so limited by other things. Like you can't cross running water, you have to sleep in grave dirt.
But you can fly
Yeah, I guess.
and you never die.
That's, I'm not sure that's a pro, but okay.
Ooh. Well, I think,
Existentialism.
yeah, I think you summed it up
So I
pretty
looked
well.
up online.
Huh.
Before the end of 19th century, the Greeks believed that the corpses of werewolves, if not destroyed, would return to life as vampires in the form of wolves or hyenas which prowl battlefields,
What?
drinking
That's
the
a
blood of dying soldiers. So-
Zombie plus a vampire.
yeah, so that's where the lore apparently first began, that
nice.
vampires and werewolves
Oh,
have
that's
to
with
fight
it.
for domain.
I see. I read a...
So essentially, in many ways, humans are the same things that become monsters for them. Like, that's
Right.
what they're looking at. Like, either a vampire bites you or a werewolf bites you, you become either
That
of those.
thing.
Yeah.
Well, we're still waiting for a day when a vampire or a werewolf bites either of us. And we get to experience that on our own, hopefully.
If you
Or
have
not.
ever been bitten by a vampire or werewolf, please write in.
Yes,
But
and
there are
let us
feral
know.
childs, guys. There are a lot of these kids who are found in the wild, raised by wolves, and also they become like inhabitant.
Yeah, but
That
that is
was
a
Mowgli.
nurture thing. That's not like a...
Mowgli ke alawa bhi the real kids. If you look up online, also.
Yeah, but that is because that's how they've adapted to survive in that environment. It's not a condition which
We should
happens.
send more kids to become like that, I feel, eventually. Then we don't have to worry about casting people for werewolf movies.
Oh my
Yeah.
god.
Precisely.
Yeah.
all right, so that pretty much brings us to the end of the episode. Tell us, what side are you on? Do you prefer vampires or werewolves, or what other creature tickles your fancy? And we shall mention that in our future episodes. Thank you so much for joining us. Naveen, where can one find you on social media?
On Twitter, @no_Rona.
All right, and what about you, Alika?
You can find me on Twitter at CapeFoxAlix. That's CapeFoxAlix.
Nice. And you can find me on Twitter at Abbas Momin. That's ABBASMOMIN. You can follow IVM Podcasts on social media. We're on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook as IVM Podcasts. So hit us up and we'll see you all next week. Thank you so much for listening.
Bye.
As you can see, we have a podcast listener in his natural habitat. Millions of years of evolution have led him to this point. He's on his way to work, and listening to podcasts makes his miserable day better. He will now head to work and use all his knowledge to communicate with other colleagues and possibly future mates. You can find more of his species on ivmpodcasts.com, your one-stop destination where you can check out all the coolest Indian podcasts. Happy listening.